The alarm buzzed at 6 in the morning, sharp and steady. David Miller reached out from under the covers, smacked the snooze button, and let out a long breath. Another day had begun. He sat up slowly, rubbed his tired eyes, and glanced at the framed photo on his nightstand. It was of him and his little girl, Emily, taken at the park last summer. She was sitting on his shoulders, laughing, her hair blowing wildly in the wind. That photo always reminded him why he pushed through the endless late nights and early mornings. Running a company wasn't easy. Running it alone while raising a child was even harder. David often said that his life felt like two full-time jobs that never ended. On one hand, he was the CEO of a growing tech firm, responsible for hundreds of employees, investors, and clients. On the other, he was dad, chef, chauffeur, bedtime storyteller, and protector of one very curious, very lively 7-year-old. He got up, showered quickly, and threw on a crisp navy suit. The tie was slightly crooked, but he didn't bother fixing it just yet. He walked down the hallway to Emily's room. Pushing open the door, he found her already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her stuffed bunny in her lap. "Morning, sweetheart," he said softly. "Morning, Daddy," she answered, looking up with sleepy eyes. "Do I have school today?" "You do," he replied, smiling. "And you also have art class after lunch, remember?" Her face lit up. "Can I bring my colored pencils?" "They're already in your backpack," he said, patting her head gently. He had packed them the night before, knowing she'd ask. Emily hopped up and started pulling on her school uniform, a simple white blouse and navy skirt. She was still small for her age, her sleeves a little too long, but she wore them proudly. David watched her for a moment, his chest tightening with affection. Raising her alone wasn't what he had planned for his life, but it was the most important thing he had ever done. Downstairs, the smell of toast filled the kitchen. David hurriedly scrambled eggs while checking emails on his phone. A major contract was on the line, and his board was waiting for his final approval. He read through paragraphs of legal language while trying not to burn the eggs. Multitasking had become second nature, though it drained him more than he admitted. "Daddy, can I have extra butter?" Emily asked, sliding into her chair. "Of course," he said, spreading it thickly across her toast. She munched happily while humming a song from her favorite cartoon. David checked the time. He had exactly 40 minutes to get her to school, and then make it across town for a meeting with investors. His mind was already racing ahead, mapping out traffic routes and calculating whether he could skim a few minutes off his commute. After breakfast, they rushed out the door. Emily clutched her bunny in one hand and her backpack in the other, skipping to the car. David followed, adjusting his tie as he unlocked the doors. The sky was still pale with morning light, the streets buzzing with commuters. Inside the car, Emily chattered about her friend Lily, who had brought cupcakes to class the day before. David listened half-heartedly, his eyes darting between traffic and the calendar alerts flashing on his dashboard screen. "Daddy, are you listening?" Emily asked suddenly. "Yes, of course," he said quickly, glancing back at her in the rearview mirror. "Cupcakes. Sounds delicious." She gave him a skeptical look, then giggled. "You're thinking about work again." He grinned sheepishly. "Maybe a little, but I'm still listening to you." The drive was longer than usual. Roadwork had closed 2 lanes, and every driver in the city seemed to be in a hurry. David drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, glancing at the clock every few minutes. Finally, the navigation app chimed, instructing him to take a side street toward the school. He followed it, distracted by another buzzing email notification on his phone. When they finally pulled up to the building, David exhaled in relief. The school looked familiar enough. Large red brick walls, a playground on the side, and children with backpacks streaming inside. In his rush, he didn't think twice. He parked, grabbed Emily's backpack, and walked her to the front steps. "Have a great day, Em," he said, kneeling to kiss her forehead. "I'll see you after school, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." She hugged him tightly, then bounded up the steps toward the entrance. David watched her disappear into the hallway before jogging back to his car. His phone rang the moment he sat down, his assistant reminding him that the investors were already waiting. He pulled out of the parking lot, his mind flipping back into CEO mode. Inside the school, Emily paused. The hallways looked different. The posters on the walls weren't the same ones she remembered, and the classrooms didn't have the same decorations. She clutched her bunny tighter, her small steps slowing. Maybe Daddy had brought her to a different entrance, she thought. Or maybe they had redecorated over the weekend. A bell rang and children hurried past her into classrooms. Emily hesitated, unsure where to go. That was when a gentle voice called out, "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Emily turned to see a woman standing nearby. She wore a soft gray sweater and had glasses perched on her nose. Her smile was kind, though a little shy. I think this is my school," Emily said quietly. "But it looks different." The woman knelt down so they were eye level. "What's your name?" "Emily." "And which class are you in, Emily?" "Mrs. Brown's," she replied quickly, her voice more confident now. The woman's brow furrowed slightly. "We don't have a Mrs. Brown here." Emily's cheeks flushed. She hugged her bunny tighter, her eyes glistening with confusion. "It's all right," the woman said softly. "Let's figure this out together, okay? You're safe here." At that moment, the phone buzzed in the woman's hand. She glanced at it, then looked back at Emily. "Why don't we call your dad and make sure you're in the right place?" she suggested gently. Emily nodded, her lips pressed together. She trusted the kindness in the woman's eyes, even if everything else felt strange. Meanwhile, David was halfway across town when his own phone buzzed. He glanced down and saw an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hello?" he said briskly. "Is this Mr. Miller?" a calm voice asked. "Yes, this is him." "This is Claire Thompson. I'm a teacher at Maplewood Elementary. Your daughter Emily is here, but it seems there may have been a mix-up. I think she might be registered at a different school." David's heart dropped. He swerved slightly before correcting the wheel. "Oh no, I must have," he groaned, pressing a hand to his forehead. "I'm so sorry. I dropped her off at the wrong school?" "It happens," Claire said gently. "She's safe with me. You can come pick her up whenever you're able." David checked the clock again. His meeting was in 20 minutes and the office was still 15 minutes away. He closed his eyes briefly, torn between responsibilities. But there was no real choice. Emily came first. "I'll be there right away," he said. As he turned the car around, a wave of guilt washed over him. How could he of all people make such a careless mistake? He prided himself on being in control, on managing everything perfectly. But this morning, in his rush, he had let his daughter down. Back at Maplewood Elementary, Emily sat in a small classroom beside Claire. The teacher offered her a piece of paper and colored pencils to keep her busy. Emily hesitated at first, then began to draw, a little house with a garden and a bright sun overhead. "That's beautiful," Claire said softly, watching her. Emily peeked up, shy but pleased. "It's our house. Daddy says we'll plant flowers next spring." Claire smiled, her heart warming. There was something about the little girl's quiet resilience that touched her. She could see that Emily was well loved, even if today had been a little confusing. A short while later, David hurried through the front doors, his tie now completely askew and his expression full of worry. Claire met him in the hallway, her posture calm and steady. "You must be Mr. Miller," she said kindly. "Yes, David," he said out of breath. "I'm so sorry about this. I can't believe It's really okay," she said, her tone reassuring. "These things happen. Emily has been just fine." He looked past her into the classroom and saw his daughter sitting happily with crayons in her hand. Relief flooded him. "Daddy," Emily cried, jumping up and running to him. He scooped her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he whispered into her hair. "Daddy made a mistake this morning." "It's okay," she murmured, squeezing him back. "I wasn't scared." He kissed her forehead and turned back to Claire. "Thank you, I mean it. Thank you for taking care of her." Claire gave a small smile, pushing her glasses back up the bridge of her nose. "Of course. That's what we're here for." For a brief moment, their eyes met. David noticed the warmth behind her shyness, the way she had treated Emily with patience and kindness. And though he was still flustered from the chaos of the morning, something about that quiet smile lingered in his mind as he carried Emily out of the school and back toward their car. The morning's chaos still lingered in David's mind long after he dropped Emily off at her real school. He sat in the car for a moment before heading into his office, pressing his forehead against the steering wheel. He couldn't believe how distracted he had been. For someone who built his career on precision and planning, he had made one of the most basic mistakes, driving his daughter to the wrong school. By the time he walked into the boardroom, he had straightened his tie, fixed his expression, and slipped back into his CEO role. His colleagues might have seen the calm, polished executive they expected, But inside, he was replaying the look on Emily's face when she had realized something was off. He hated that he had caused her even a moment of confusion. Throughout the meeting, his mind wandered back to the teacher who had helped Emily. Claire Thompson, that was her name. She had spoken in a soft, steady way, not judgmental, not rushed. She could have easily been annoyed at having an unexpected child show up in her classroom. But instead, she had treated Emily as if she belonged. That kindness was something David couldn't shake from his mind. Later that evening, after tucking Emily into bed, David sat at his desk at home. His laptop was open, but he wasn't really working. He stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, his thoughts drifting. He wondered about that teacher, what her story was, why she had seemed a little shy yet so attentive. He realized he didn't know anything about her beyond her name. Still, the memory of her warm smile stayed with him. The following days fell back into routine. David woke early, made breakfast, packed lunches, rushed Emily to the right school this time, and then sped to work. Yet the memory of that accidental meeting kept resurfacing. He didn't expect to see Claire again. After all, it wasn't Emily's school, and their lives ran on separate tracks. But sometimes life has a way of bringing people together when least expected. That weekend, Emily's school hosted a small community fair. Families set up booths, local businesses donated food, and children ran around playing games. David brought Emily, happy to see her so excited. She tugged his hand toward the craft table, her face glowing. As he stood nearby watching her glue colorful paper together, David noticed someone familiar across the field. At first he thought he might be imagining it, but then she turned slightly and he recognized her immediately. It was Claire. She was helping a group of kids paint a banner. Her sleeves rolled up, her hair pulled back simply. She moved carefully, speaking softly, making sure each child felt included. David felt a strange mix of surprise and something else, something like relief. He hadn't expected to see her again, yet there she was, part of the same community. For a moment, he debated whether to approach her. Maybe she wouldn't even remember him. Maybe it would feel awkward. But as Emily noticed her too, the decision was made for him. "Daddy, that's the teacher who helped me," Emily whispered, tugging his sleeve. David smiled faintly. "Yes, it is." Emily waved and Claire looked up. Their eyes met across the busy field. For a second, Claire seemed unsure, almost startled, but then she offered a small, polite smile. David raised a hand in return before walking over with Emily at his side. "Hello again," he said, his tone warm but cautious. Claire pushed her glasses up nervously. "Mr. Miller, right?" "David," he corrected gently. "Please, just David," she nodded, her smile faint but genuine. "And Emily. It's nice to see you both under less confusing circumstances." Emily giggled. "Daddy put me in the wrong school," she said, her voice light. David groaned softly, covering his face with his hand. "Yes, thank you for reminding everyone." Claire laughed quietly, the sound soft but pleasant. "It happens. Really, no harm done." For a moment they stood there with the noise of the fair around them, children laughing, music playing faintly from the speakers. David noticed how Claire seemed comfortable with kids but slightly unsure with adults. She kept her focus on the children painting nearby, as though it gave her something steady to hold on to. "Do you work at Emily's school too?" David asked, curious. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I teach at Maplewood, but I live nearby, so I volunteer here sometimes. It's nice to be part of the community, even if it's not my school." David nodded, impressed. "That's kind of you." She shrugged slightly as if brushing off the compliment. "I just like helping where I can." Emily had already joined the other children at the banner, dipping her brush in paint. David and Claire stepped back to give the kids space. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then David found himself saying what had been on his mind since that morning of the mistake. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You went out of your way for Emily that day. I was so caught up in feeling embarrassed, I don't think I said it clearly enough." Claire looked at him, then away. "You did thank me, and it really wasn't a big deal. She's a sweet girl. I was happy to keep her company until you arrived." Still, David shook his head. It mattered. To her and to me. There was sincerity in his voice that made Claire pause. She wasn't used to people speaking to her like that. Direct, genuine, without pretense. It made her cheeks warm, and she busied herself by adjusting the paint jars on the table. The fair stretched on into the afternoon. Emily proudly showed off her crafts, dragged her father to the cotton candy stand, and laughed on the merry-go-round. All the while, Claire remained somewhere nearby, helping children, tidying up, or simply observing with her gentle smile. Eventually, as the sun began to sink lower, David found himself standing beside her again while Emily ran with friends. "You're good with kids," he said casually. Claire hesitated, as if unsure how to respond. "I guess I just understand them better than adults sometimes," she admitted. "Kids are honest. They don't pretend to be something they're not." David considered that. "That's true," he said softly. "Adults tend to hide behind a lot of layers." Claire gave a small nod, her eyes thoughtful. There was a quiet moment between them, not uncomfortable but steady. David found himself wanting to know more about her. What she liked, what she dreamed about, why she seemed both strong and shy at the same time. But before he could ask, Emily came running back, sticky with cotton candy, and threw her arms around his waist. "Daddy, can we stay a little longer?" she begged. David laughed, brushing the sugar off her cheek. "We'll see, sweetheart." When he looked up, Claire was smiling faintly at the sight, though she quickly turned away when she realized he'd noticed. As the fair wound down, families began packing up. David helped Emily gather her things, then turned back toward Claire. She was folding the banner with a couple of kids, her hands gentle as she guided them. "Maybe we'll see you around again," he said, his voice carrying a note of hope he hadn't meant to reveal. Claire gave a polite nod, her smile reserved. "Maybe." David walked away with Emily, but his mind stayed behind. Something about her lingered, her quiet steadiness, her humility, the way she seemed to exist just slightly outside the noise of the world. He didn't know why it mattered so much, but it did. That night, as Emily slept peacefully, David stood by her door, watching her breathe softly. He thought of how easily the day could have gone differently, how one mistake had led to a meeting he hadn't expected. Life, he realized, didn't always follow the plans he laid out so carefully. Sometimes it stumbled, sometimes it surprised, and sometimes it introduced you to someone who made you pause, just long enough to wonder what might happen next. The week after the community fair was busy for David. Work deadlines piled up, meetings stretched late, and the constant ping of emails followed him everywhere. But no matter how crowded his schedule became, his mind kept wandering back to the quiet teacher he had met by accident, and then again at the fair. It was strange, he thought. He had met countless people in his line of work, investors, executives, leaders with sharp voices and firm handshakes. Yet he couldn't recall any of their faces the way he remembered hers. The shy way she smiled, the softness in her voice when she spoke to Emily, even the way she had seemed more at ease with children than with him. All of it had stayed with him. One evening, after finishing dinner with Emily, he sat on the couch while she worked on a puzzle on the rug. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "will we see that nice teacher again?" David looked up from his phone. "Which one, sweetheart?" "The one from the fair," Emily said matter-of-factly. "The one who helped me when you dropped me at the wrong school." David chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yes, that one." Emily nodded seriously. "She was really nice. I liked her." Her words tugged at David's heart. "Maybe we will," he said softly, though he wasn't sure how or when, as fate would have it. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The following Saturday, Emily was invited to a birthday party for one of her classmates at the local park. David drove her there, planning to stay nearby so she could enjoy the games. Balloons were tied to benches, music played from a small speaker, and children ran in circles chasing bubbles. While Emily joined her friends, David took a seat at a picnic table, sipping coffee from a paper cup. He was scanning through some notes on his phone when he noticed a familiar figure across the park. Claire was standing near a group of parents, her hands clasped in front of her, her posture reserved but attentive. David's eyebrows rose. Twice now, life had placed her in his path. Emily spotted her too. "Daddy, look, it's her!" she exclaimed, pointing. Without waiting, she ran over to greet Claire. David followed more slowly, his heart beating faster than he cared to admit. "Emily," Claire said warmly, bending down to meet her. "What a nice surprise." "I'm at a party," Emily explained proudly. "My daddy's here too." Claire straightened, her gaze meeting David's. For a moment, they both seemed caught off guard, unsure how to bridge the coincidence. Then David smiled. Seems like we keep running into each other, he said lightly. Claire gave a small laugh. It does look that way. They stood together while the children played nearby. The awkwardness faded as Emily kept talking, filling the gaps with her cheerful chatter. David noticed how Claire always bent slightly to listen to Emily, giving her full attention in a way most adults didn't. It reminded him of how rare patience was in the world. So, David said after a pause, do you teach full-time at Maplewood? Yes, she said. 2nd grade. I've been there for a few years. Do you enjoy it? He asked. Her eyes softened, and for the first time he saw a spark of passion beneath her shy surface. I do. It's challenging sometimes, but it's worth it. Seeing kids grow, helping them believe in themselves, that makes it meaningful. David nodded. That sounds rewarding. It is, she agreed, then hesitated. But it can also be overwhelming, I guess. Teachers aren't always given the support they need. Her honesty struck him. Most people he met in business only showed confidence, never vulnerability. But here was someone admitting openly that her work was hard, even if she loved it. Emily ran back just then, her cheeks red from running. Daddy, can I play longer? She asked. Of course, David said with a smile. She darted off again, leaving him and Claire standing in comfortable silence. You're a very devoted father, Claire said quietly, surprising him. David looked at her, startled. You can tell? She smiled faintly. Emily talks about you a lot. Even at the fair, she said you packed her colored pencils. That's the kind of detail kids remember. Her words touched him more than he expected. I try, he admitted. It isn't always easy balancing everything. But she's the most important part of my life. Claire's expression softened. She's lucky to have you. For a moment, their eyes held and something unspoken lingered there. Then Claire looked away, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The rest of the party passed in laughter and games. When it was time to leave, Emily hugged her friends goodbye and then waved at Claire one last time. David thanked her politely before leading Emily to the car. That night, as Emily slept, David sat on the couch replaying the day. He realized he wanted to see Claire again, not by accident, not by coincidence, but on purpose. And that thought both unsettled and excited him. The following week, he found himself passing by Maplewood Elementary after dropping Emily at her own school. He slowed the car, debating with himself. Was it strange to stop by? Would she think it odd? But something inside urged him forward. He parked and walked toward the building, telling himself he just wanted to say thank you again. Inside, the halls were quiet, filled with the faint smell of crayons and chalk. He asked a staff member if Claire Thompson was available, and a few minutes later she appeared in the doorway. She looked surprised to see him. David? He smiled, suddenly feeling self-conscious. Hi. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. I didn't mean to interrupt. She adjusted her glasses nervously. You didn't, I just wasn't expecting you. I know, he admitted. I guess I just wanted to say thank you again. For everything. And maybe, if you're free sometime, I could buy you a coffee? As a small thank you. For a second, Claire looked as though she might refuse. Her natural shyness rose to the surface and she glanced away. But then she met his eyes again and gave a small nod. Coffee sounds nice, she said softly. David felt a smile spread across his face. Great, I'll call you. She nodded again, her cheeks faintly pink. As he walked back to his car, David felt lighter than he had in months. It was just coffee, he told himself. Nothing more. But deep down he knew it was more than that. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something that had started with a simple mistake on a hectic morning. And though he didn't know where it would lead, he felt for the first time in a long while that maybe his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. David hadn't been nervous about a meeting in years. He was used to speaking in front of investors, leading staff, even answering tough questions from the press. But now, standing in line at a small cafe waiting for Claire to arrive, his hands felt strangely restless. He checked his watch, then the door, then back at his watch again. When she finally walked in, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. She wore a simple dress with a cardigan, her hair pulled back, her glasses catching the afternoon light. She looked both shy and graceful, like someone who didn't try to draw attention yet somehow did anyway. Hi, she said softly when she reached him. Hi, he replied, smiling. I'm glad you came. They ordered coffee and found a small table by the window. The cafe was warm, filled with the hum of quiet conversations and the smell of fresh pastries. For a while they talked about small things, the weather, the neighborhood, the school fair. It felt safe, easy, like walking slowly into a conversation that neither wanted to rush. After a few minutes, David leaned back in his chair, his voice lowering. "Can I be honest with you?" Claire glanced up, her eyes cautious but curious. "Of course. I don't usually do this," he admitted. "I don't usually ask people out like this. My life is pretty much work and Emily, and I'm fine with that. But something about meeting you, it felt different. Like I should at least try to know you better." Claire's cheeks warmed. She stirred her coffee slowly before speaking. "I wasn't sure if I should come. I'm not very social. I spend most of my time with kids, and with them it feels natural. With adults I sometimes feel out of place." David nodded. "I can understand that. I feel out of place a lot too, believe it or not. In business, I'm supposed to have all the answers, always look confident. But inside, I don't always feel that way." She looked at him surprised. "You don't?" He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Not even close. Most days, I'm just trying to keep everything from falling apart." There was a silence then, but not an uncomfortable one. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people realize they've let down their guard a little. Claire spoke first. "When Emily was in my classroom that day, she reminded me of myself as a child. A little shy, holding on to something familiar. Her bunny. I felt protective of her. It was easy to sit with her, to keep her busy until you arrived. She's a wonderful girl." David's chest tightened at the kindness in her voice. "Thank you. She means everything to me. Sometimes I worry I'm not doing enough, that I'm missing things because of work." "You're there," Claire said gently. "That's what she'll remember. Not the mistakes. Not the busy mornings. She'll remember that you showed up." Her words struck him deeply. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear them. The conversation stretched on for more than an hour. They shared little stories. David about juggling late-night emails and bedtime stories. Claire about a student who once gave her a drawing that simply said, "Thank you," in shaky letters. The more they spoke, the more David realized how rare this was. Someone who didn't want anything from him, who wasn't impressed by his title or his success. She was simply present, listening, sharing pieces of herself with quiet honesty. When it was time to leave, they stepped out into the cool air together. David walked her to her car, hesitating before speaking. "Would you like to do this again?" Claire hesitated too, her shyness flickering across her face. Then she nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." David smiled, and for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. Over the next few weeks, their paths began to cross more often. Sometimes it was planned. Coffee, a walk in the park, simple conversations that stretched longer than either expected. Other times it was chance, seeing each other at the library or at a neighborhood event. Each time the space between them seemed to grow smaller. Emily noticed too. One evening, as David tucked her into bed, she looked up at him with a mischievous smile. "Daddy, do you like the nice teacher?" she asked innocently. David chuckled, brushing her hair from her forehead. "She's very nice, yes," Emily grinned wider. "I like her too." "She listens." "Not everyone listens." David kissed her forehead. "That's true, sweetheart." "She's special." Emily yawned, her eyes fluttering shut. Maybe she could come for dinner sometime. The idea lingered with David long after Emily fell asleep. It was a Saturday afternoon when he finally asked. Claire was free, Emily was eager, and the house smelled of roasted chicken and herbs. David fussed more than usual, straightening the table, checking the oven, smoothing his shirt. When Claire arrived, Emily greeted her with uncontainable excitement, pulling her inside as if she had always belonged there. "Come see my room," Emily exclaimed, dragging her upstairs before David could even say hello properly. Claire laughed softly, letting herself be led. When she returned, her smile was brighter. "She's very proud of her drawings." "She should be," David said. "She's always creating something." Dinner was simple but warm. Conversation flowed easily, with Emily filling the gaps when David and Claire grew quiet. Afterward, they sat in the living room, Emily curled up with her bunny while the adults talked softly. At one point, Emily dozed off, her head resting on Claire's arm. David watched, his heart full. The sight of his daughter, so comfortable with someone outside their little world, touched him more than words could. "You're good with her," he said quietly. Claire looked down at the sleeping child, her voice gentle. "She makes it easy." David felt a lump in his throat. "You don't know how rare this is. For someone to fit into her life, into our life. It doesn't happen often." Claire met his eyes, her expression soft but uncertain. "I'm not sure where this is going, David, but I do know that I enjoy being with you, and with her." His heart steadied at her honesty. "That's enough for now," he said simply. As the weeks turned into months, what had begun with a mistake grew into something steady, something real. They still took things slowly, coffee, walks, simple dinners, but each moment added another thread to the bond forming between them. David opened up about the struggles of single fatherhood, the loneliness of nights after Emily was asleep, the pressure of being both provider and parent. Claire, in turn, shared her own fears, her worry that her shyness made her invisible, her dream of writing children's books someday but not knowing if she had the courage. They listened to each other. They encouraged each other, and most of all, they made each other feel less alone. One evening, after walking Claire to her car, David paused. The night air was cool, the street quiet. He looked at her, really looked at her. The shy teacher who had once been a stranger, now someone who felt like part of his life. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly. "But I'm glad we found each other." Claire's smile was small but steady. "Me too." And as she drove away, David realized that sometimes the best things in life don't come from careful plans or perfect timing. Sometimes they come from mistakes, from unexpected moments, from people who walk into your life quietly, but leave a mark that changes everything. The months passed quietly, almost without notice. What had once been chance meetings had now become part of the rhythm of life. David found himself looking forward to evenings when Claire would join them for dinner, or afternoons when they would walk together in the park while Emily skipped ahead with her bunny in hand. It felt natural, almost as if she had always been there. David often wondered how such an unexpected turn could feel so right. He had spent years building a life around control and responsibility. Yet here was something he had never planned for, something that had slipped in through the cracks of a hectic morning when he had dropped his daughter at the wrong school. One Friday evening, David came home later than usual. He was tired from a long day of meetings, but as soon as he opened the front door, he was greeted by the sound of laughter. Emily's laughter. It came from the kitchen. When he stepped inside, he saw Claire at the stove stirring a pot while Emily sat at the counter, telling her some wild story about school. Claire looked up and smiled when she saw him, her expression both shy and welcoming. "You're cooking?" David asked in surprise. "Emily invited me," Claire replied softly, a little blush on her cheeks. Emily grinned. "She makes better pasta than you, Daddy." David laughed, shaking his head. "I believe it." They ate together at the table, the conversation flowing easily. Emily filled the room with her stories, while David and Claire exchanged small smiles across the table. It was simple, ordinary, and yet to David it felt extraordinary. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, David and Claire sat in the living room. The quiet was comfortable, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. "Do you ever think about how strange this all is?" David asked suddenly. Claire tilted her head. "Strange?" "That morning," he said. "If I hadn't been distracted, if I hadn't taken a wrong turn, you and I might never have met." Claire thought about it, then smiled faintly. "Sometimes life works that way. Mistakes aren't always bad. Sometimes they lead you to the right place." David studied her face in the soft light. "I think you might be right." The following week, Emily's school hosted a parent-teacher event. David attended, sitting proudly as Emily presented her project. Claire wasn't officially part of the school, but she had come to help with organizing the event. As David watched her move among the children and parents, he realized just how much she had become a part of their lives. She wasn't only a teacher who had helped Emily. She wasn't only a kind face he had run into at community gatherings. She was someone who cared, someone who stayed. When the event ended, Emily clung to Claire's hand, asking if she could walk them to the car. Claire laughed softly and agreed. As they stood by the car, Emily looked up at both of them, her eyes wide and hopeful. "Can we do this forever?" she asked. David's heart tightened. He crouched down to meet her eyes. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I mean us. You, me, and her, Emily said, pointing to Claire. It feels nice. Like a family. David was quiet for a moment, not wanting to rush the weight of her words. He glanced at Claire, who looked both touched and unsure. He smiled gently at his daughter. We'll see, Em, but no matter what, you'll always have me. And we'll always have people who care about us. Emily nodded sleepily, satisfied with that answer for now. Weeks turned into more months. Seasons changed. Their bond deepened. David and Claire didn't label what they had, but they didn't need to. It was in the way she made Emily laugh. It was in the way David could finally let down his guard around her. It was in the quiet evenings that felt complete without needing more. One Sunday afternoon, the three of them went to the park. The air was cool, leaves crunching beneath their shoes. Emily ran ahead, chasing a kite, her laughter ringing through the trees. David and Claire walked side by side, their hands brushing before finally intertwining. Do you ever miss the quiet life you had before all this? David asked. Claire smiled, her eyes following Emily. It wasn't really a life. It was just days passing. This feels different. This feels real. David squeezed her hand gently. It does, doesn't it? They stopped to watch Emily struggle with the kite string, her determination fierce. David moved to help her, but Claire touched his arm. Let her try. She'll figure it out. He nodded, watching his daughter with pride. And in that moment, standing beside Claire, he realized something. He wasn't carrying everything alone anymore. Life didn't feel so heavy. Later, as they sat on a bench watching the sunset, David turned to Claire. His voice was low, thoughtful. You've changed things for us, for me. I didn't expect it, but I'm grateful. Claire met his gaze, her smile quiet but steady. You've changed things for me, too. Emily came running back then, throwing her arms around them both. We did it. The kite flew. David laughed, pulling her close. Claire wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders. And just like that, the three of them sat together, watching the last of the light fade, feeling like a family even if no one had spoken the word aloud. Life didn't become perfect. Work was still demanding. Mornings were still rushed. There were still days when David felt pulled in too many directions. But now there was something different. There was balance. There was support. There was hope. What had begun with a mistake, a wrong turn, a rushed morning, had become something none of them could have predicted. A new beginning. And as David tucked Emily into bed that night, she whispered sleepily, Daddy, today felt like one of the best days ever. He kissed her forehead, his voice warm. It was, sweetheart. It really was. When he closed her door and walked back into the living room, Claire was waiting on the couch, her smile gentle. David sat beside her, feeling a quiet certainty settle in his chest. Sometimes, the wrong school could lead you to the right person. And this time, it had led him home. The weeks after that quiet evening on the couch felt different. Though nothing dramatic had changed, David still woke early to prepare Emily's lunch, still hurried to drop her off at school before heading into the city for meetings. Claire still taught, spending her days in classrooms filled with children's voices, but somewhere beneath the ordinary routines there was a new sense of belonging. On Tuesday mornings, Claire sometimes stopped by with muffins, knowing Emily would love the treat before school. On Fridays, David tried to leave work a little earlier so they could all share dinner together. And on Sundays, the three of them would go walking in the park, Emily skipping ahead while David and Claire followed at an easier pace. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. One evening, after Emily had fallen asleep, David sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He had been staring at the same document for 10 minutes without typing. Claire, who was reading a book nearby, looked up. Long day? She asked. David rubbed his forehead. Always, but lately it feels heavier. Investors want more. Staff want answers. And then I come home and all I want to do is switch it all off. But I can't. Claire closed her book. Do you ever let yourself rest? He gave a small laugh. Rest? I don't remember the last time. You should, she said gently. You can't keep carrying everything without a break. Her words were simple, but they stayed with him. He realized she was right. He had been running on pressure and duty for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to stop. That weekend, he did something unusual. He turned off his phone for half a day. They drove to a nearby lake, where Emily played by the shore while he and Claire sat under a tree. For the first time in months, he didn't think about emails or deadlines. He just breathed. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Claire asked. "For reminding me there's more to life than work." She smiled, her eyes on Emily. "Sometimes it takes a child to show us. She pulls you out of the office whether you're ready or not." David chuckled. "That she does." As their bond grew stronger, new questions began to form, quiet questions that none of them said aloud. Emily, in her innocent way, sometimes hinted at them. One evening, while coloring at the table, she looked up at her father. "Daddy, does she live with us?" she asked, nodding toward Claire. Claire smiled softly but didn't answer, waiting for David. "Not yet," David said carefully. "She has her own home. But she visits us a lot, doesn't she?" Emily nodded, satisfied for now. Later, when Emily had gone upstairs, David sat with Claire in the living room. "She notices everything," he said with a sigh. "Children always do," Claire replied. "They don't need explanations. They just feel." David looked at her seriously. "And what do you feel?" Her expression grew thoughtful. "I feel safe here. With you, with her. I didn't expect that. But I don't want to rush it either. It's enough to just be in this." David nodded. He respected her honesty. He didn't want to push, but he also couldn't deny what was forming between them. A few weeks later, Claire faced her own challenge. She had always kept a quiet dream tucked away, a dream of writing a children's book. She had told David about it one evening, almost in a whisper, as if saying it aloud would make it too real. "You should try," he had encouraged her. "I wouldn't know where to start," she had said, shaking her head. "Start with the stories you already tell in class," he replied. "Start small." One night, Claire showed him the first few pages she had written. It was about a little bunny who felt shy but discovered courage when she found friends. David read it slowly, smiling as he recognized pieces of Emily woven into the story. "This is beautiful," he said. "You should keep going." Claire looked uncertain, but his encouragement gave her the courage to write more. Soon, evenings at David's house sometimes meant the three of them sitting together. Emily coloring, David reviewing work papers, Claire scribbling notes for her story. It felt like a family in quiet harmony. But harmony never lasts without a test. One Monday, David was called into an urgent meeting. A major investor was threatening to pull support, and the future of his company hung in the balance. He worked late, missing dinner, missing bedtime. When he finally returned home, exhausted, Emily was asleep, and Claire sat on the couch with a worried look. "You can't keep doing this," she said softly. "I didn't have a choice," he replied. "There's always a choice," she said gently but firmly. "I know your work matters, but so does she, and so do you." Her words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. He wanted to be the kind of father who was present, the kind of man who was balanced. But sometimes the weight of responsibility threatened to tip him off course. That night, he lay awake thinking about what Claire had said. He knew something had to change. The change didn't happen overnight. But little by little, David began setting boundaries. He left his office earlier twice a week. He said no to meetings that could be handled without him. He learned to put his phone aside during dinner. It wasn't easy, but the rewards were immediate. He saw the way Emily's face lit up when he surprised her at school pickup. He felt the way Claire relaxed beside him when he was fully present. And slowly he felt lighter too. One evening, months later, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, David spoke. "Do you ever think about the future? About where this is going?" Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes. It scares me. But it also feels right." He took her hand, his voice steady. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. But I do know this, I want you in it. And I want Emily to grow up knowing what it means to be loved and supported. Not just by me, but by us." Claire's eyes softened. "I want that too." At that moment, Emily ran outside, holding her bunny high in the air. "Look, Bunny wants to see the sunset too." David and Claire laughed, pulling her close between them. The three of them watched the sky turn shades of gold and pink, the bunny tucked between Emily's arms. And in that simple moment, surrounded by laughter and quiet love, David realized something. The wrong turn he had taken that morning months ago had given him more than he could have imagined. Not just a teacher, not just a partner, but a chance at a fuller life. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. There were still stressful days at work. There were still nights when Emily had trouble sleeping, or when Claire doubted her writing. But now there was a foundation that held them together. They had built it slowly, carefully through honesty, patience, and love. And as David tucked Emily in one night, she whispered sleepily, "Daddy, I think Bunny is happy too. Bunny likes her." David smiled, kissing her forehead. "I think you're right." When he closed the door and found Claire waiting in the hallway, he took her hand, holding it tightly. Whatever tomorrow brought, he knew they would face it together. Sometimes, mistakes lead you exactly where you're meant to be.